Hello, and welcome to another episode of Mindset, Money, Success. And before we get started into today's podcast, I just want to tell you about my Amazon merch collection. I have two collections. One is narcissist aware, and the other one is self care. And these t shirts, which are slogan t shirts, are all available on Amazon merch under my brand Success with Loraine. And I'll leave a link down below in the show notes and underneath this video. Now, the other thing that I want to tell you about is a free group that I've created within Facebook, and this is a safe space for women who are over 40, who are ready to move from trauma to transformation after any kind of trauma at the end of a relationship. And that could be death of a partner, it could be going through a divorce, or it could be like myself, the last one, which was betrayal and abandonment, or I call it now discard. So if you're a woman over 40 and you've been through any type of that type of trauma, then this group is for you, because I'm going to impart my knowledge and my experience from 4 years of post-separation abuse and the grief from a previous partner who died in front of me, basically. And so I've experienced a lot of trauma in my life, but I'm one of these people who try to use the pain to go from pain into purpose and move forward. And so that's what I've been doing with my life over 4 years of post separation, despite litigation abuse, psychological abuse, emotional abuse, over 4 years. And then in the relationship, I didn't understand the emotional abuse and devaluation that I experienced, not until the end of the relationship. And so I'm now, because of the research I've done and of the knowledge I've gained through the research and my experience, I want to help other people to get through this. So this is why I've set up this free group. Now, it's all about the subject of this type of podcast. Now, it's master your mindset, multiply your money, and maximize your success using your thoughts to change your mindset to move forward. And it is difficult. I know it's difficult because I've been through it, and lots of other women have been through this type of trauma. And it isn't easy to navigate the legal system either. Now, I have been navigating the legal system on my own because I didn't have any money to pay for expensive lawyers and litigations. And so I have researched laws in order to move forward. And this is what I want to be able to provide information about, on how you do that, how you can move forward, how you can find out about the laws and the regulations and be knowledgeable so that you can basically empower yourself to move forward. Don't take what solicitors say, because obviously solicitors might specialize in a certain area. Don't just accept the first advice you get. I've learned from experience, believe me. So don't accept what a solicitor says. Challenge them. I know it sounds difficult because they're supposed to be the ones with the knowledge, but I found out that sometimes solicitors give conflicting advice and it doesn't help. It doesn't really help. So basically, then all the free members who join the group, you have to actually subscribe to join, because I don't want other people who don't resonate with the group. I don't want men to join either. It's just solely for women. And so you have to actually register with an email. I'll leave that link down in the show notes and below the video. So all free members will have the opportunity to become a founder member of a paid membership group, and that would be under the banner of Loraine.live, and that price is a low-cost price. It's $10, €10, or £10, where I will be sharing the knowledge with training videos and other information to help you to move forward. There will also be opportunities for one-to-one as well, so we can chat and discuss things to help you to move forward with your life. So that is my support group, free to start. You can become a founder member at a very low cost. And that's Mindset Money Success. I'll leave all the links in the show notes. My podcast is on Apple and Spotify and Acast and on YouTube under the Success with Loraine. So let's get into today's subject, because today's subject is my documentation of 4 years of post-separation abuse. And the title for the podcast today is When 4 Months Turns into 4 Years of Post-Separation Abuse. So it's all about how I was given conflicting advice. Post-separation abuse at the end of 11 years of a relationship. Now, first, the relationship ended abruptly in August of 2020, and the past person was making a commitment during 2020. We spent 6 months together during COVID-19 lockdown. We were doing DIY projects. He had a removal van that was packed and booked, ready to be bringing out our belongings, and then it was cancelled. The first opportunity he had to fly out of Spain was July of 2020. And I was sent a photograph of how he'd packed this van with all of our possessions from the house in the UK. And in my mind, he was making a commitment to our relationship. The furniture and all our personal possessions were going to be transported to Spain. Now, he arrived back in Spain in August, and the relationship was terminated 2 days after he arrived back. Now, I call this the 4-sentence discard speech. And this is what he said. We'd entertained some guests who had been on holiday here. So we entertained a couple of guests, and the guests had left, and he wanted to make us a nightcap and sit on the seats on the porch. And when we sat down with our drinks, he came out with these 4 sentences. I've got something to tell you. I'm in love with another woman. We can remain friends if you want to remain friends. We just can't have sex anymore. Now, of course, that is a very immature way to end a relationship after 11 years. And for some reason, my intuition took over. I actually stood up and walked away. I didn't want to confront him. I didn't want to show any emotion in front of him. I knew that I had shown emotion on a previous occasion when he did something similar. So the emotional reaction I had previously was when he confessed to seeing another woman that he referred to as his Wednesday girl. Now, that was in December of 2017. Now, I stood in the middle of the lounge in our home, and I just started screaming out loud. Now, I didn't say anything at all. I just screamed. And he just stood up from the sofa, walked towards us, and wanted to put his arms around me at that point. And I just shook my head, put my hand up, and walked away. So that was how it happened in December 2017, when he confessed to having this affair that he told me had started 4 weeks before, but he'd known the woman in 2009. And even in that confession, he didn't tell the truth. So back to the story. He'd just given this 4-sentence discard speech, and I was angry. I could feel the anger rising inside of me. So I was also quite fearful that if I did react with anger in front of him, then he could have been more dangerous. So I basically walked away and let the anger out of my system while I was in the bedroom on my own. I'll not repeat what I said, but it contained a few swear words. So within days, 2 days, he had written then a letter, a financial proposal, and that letter started, "Dear Loraine." And in that letter, he'd offered me, after I leave the property, he would pay £35,000 to pay down a UK mortgage that I had on a home that was rented, because then if that was paid down, I would have an income, a monthly income from that rent. It would have been around 500 or 550 a month. The other offer he made was 50% of the value of the home that we were meant to share. Then after that, there was another offer, that he would pay all the legal fees, all of the solicitor's fees, removal fees, and I could take any of the furniture in the house. And the final part of the offer was, he said, that if I wanted to move out immediately, if I wanted to move on quickly, which I didn't, because that was him who wanted to move on quickly, that he would rent another place, rent some house, um, and so I could move out straight away. But that was like, how long's a piece of string, because it didn't have any value attached to it. It didn't have how long he would rent a place for or how much the rent would be. So his letter wasn't really very detailed, and it would have needed to be discussed and talked about. So, to be quite honest, I didn't understand how vulnerable I was, because I had trusted him. And at that point, I had no job, I had no business, and I had a minimal amount of savings, in my account. And the rented property was in the UK that had a mortgage on, and it was like bringing me about £120 a month, which wasn't enough to actually survive. It wasn't enough to live on. And I I was self-employed. I've been self-employed since 2005. I sold out of my business in 2016 when I couldn't manage it anymore, and I knew that things would go downhill quickly. So I just sold out of my business in 2016. And throughout 16, 17, I was trying to establish myself with another type of business here in Spain. So I wasn't just sitting back and just doing nothing. I was trying to reestablish an independent income, and none of it worked. And I didn't understand why nothing that I tried was working, because previously I'd been successful at things and had been able to move ahead with things. So anyway, within the week of him returning to Spain, he had made a few different life-changing decisions. And obviously it ended our relationship. Then he wanted to sell the Spanish house, and he wanted to sell his UK house, and everything was moving really, really quickly. Now, I looked at hundreds of properties online. I booked an estate agent to market our house, our home, and she brought the first people to view, before she'd even signed a contract. And within 6 days of him ending the relationship, and his writing of this very generous and kind offer, he became hostile, he became angry. The agent had called him and gave feedback about something that I had said, and she had claimed I had given negative feedback to her clients. What happened was, one of the clients had asked about the motorway that runs down the side of the house. It's the AP7, which is a toll road, a toll motorway. And I told the truth to this client. I said, I can hear the odd lorry. And I told them, Um, I can hear the odd lorry that runs down the motorway at about 6 o'clock in the morning, but I sleep with the windows open. So because I then told the truth, it was reframed as being negative, and so the former partner came into the bedroom after her call, and he was angry, and he came right up to my face, and he raged at me. Don't bout with me. I'm in control. You do as I say, or I can throw you out onto the streets. Now, that was on the 6th of September 2020. So before he left in late September, I had been threatened, intimidated, criticised, humiliated, left in an uncertain, vulnerable situation. And because he set an arbitrary deadline of 4 months, because we held a meeting in this house on the 15th of September, and he agreed that I could record this meeting, but he turned completely hostile during that meeting. He actually said he was offering, obviously, the house. He was changing the terms of the agreement because I'd already asked if he could pay the mortgage off before he left, so I would have some money to live on. I thought at least if I had 500, I would have money to live on. I wouldn't be in this vulnerable position. I wouldn't be fearful of what was going to happen. Just to have money to pay for my health insurance, to have money to put diesel in the car and things like that, because I was in grief, obviously, and a shock at what had happened. And he said he didn't have that money. So in this meeting, he reaffirmed things, and he said that he would start to pay £500 a month to my business account for 4 months, the deadline he'd set. Only there was also the intimidation and threats about still throwing me out. So it was, on one hand, he was saying one thing, and then on the other, he was like being hostile. So he said, if I didn't buy the house by the 15th of January, if the house was not sold by the 15th of January, then you're out and I'm moving back in. And his tone was very hostile. So basically, he was in control and I couldn't discuss anything because he shut down the conversation. He shut down any negotiation from the very beginning of the conversation. So when you're dealing with a coercion and emotional and psychological abuse, you really need to document everything that happens. So I actually had this recording of this meeting because in my mind, my intuition was I need this to be recorded. I knew that he could be angry, but the other reason was that if we'd come to some agreement, then that recording could have been transcribed and taken to a notary and then signed. So there was two reasons to actually record what was being said. Now, what I didn't understand, right, was what would happen in the judicial system, in the legal process, because I uncovered systemic injustice and failures. Now, I had the belief that I would have protection and support from organisations that are meant to be there for survivors, that are meant to help people if there's been any form of abuse. And I was shocked by how things unfolded. Now, I'm not alone in this situation. There's thousands of women who go through this type of abuse with hardly any support. Post-separation abuse that plays out in the legal systems. So here are the failures that I experienced. First one, I had legal advice to remain in the property. 2, second legal advice was to file a gender violence complaint. Now, I didn't really want to file the gender violence complaint. So I asked that solicitor, can you not just write to our solicitor? And he repeated that I should file a gender violence complaint because he said, did you not hear what he said? You can't negotiate with him. Well, he was right because I couldn't negotiate with the former partner. But he was a solicitor, and our solicitor together maybe could have negotiated or done some sort of alternative dispute resolution based on what he knew, right? And the evidence that I had, the recording and the letter that he had written to me to say he wanted to share the value of the property 50-50. But that didn't happen. So I was left alone to work out what should I do now. And in my grief, in my shock, in my trauma, I did something that I shouldn't have done. I made contact with the enemy, and the enemy was our solicitor. So before I did that, I rang the national helpline. So failure number 3, I rang the national helpline, and the advice was to have a solicitor when making this complaint. Then 4, I make a decision to go to the Guardia station to make a complaint. I recruit a friend to take me to this to go with me so she could translate everything. I get to the friend's house and I back out. I'm too frightened. I don't want to make the complaint. I just want my life back. I just want to get on, and I just want to have some negotiation so things could be smoothed out and move on. I'm non-confrontational. I didn't want to go to the police. I didn't want to start a whole thing. So I backed out. Anyway, so then I started to write to the enemy, which was our solicitor, to ask for cooperation, to ask for negotiation. Our solicitor knew that there'd been an offer. He even wrote back to tell me that there's been an offer, and I hadn't accepted it because my ex-partner had now told him I'd rejected the offer. That's not the truth. That was a fabrication. That was misrepresentation or manipulation, whatever you want to call it, because the truth was I had tried to negotiate with him, and then I was told I can't negotiate. You can't negotiate with me, Loraine. So that wasn't the truth. I hadn't rejected the offer because he said I had the chance to buy him out 50%, and that wasn't what he told our solicitor. So then our solicitor writes to me and tells me I have no rights in this country as an English woman, basically. And that infuriated me into thinking, okay, because now I'm being told that if I make a false complaint about domestic abuse or gender violence, then I could be prosecuted. And I didn't like that idea. So I decided then I will go to the police. And I went alone to the Guardia station. And because I'd been told that I needed a solicitor, I make 2 requests at the police station. On the first day I made a request, I need to have a solicitor. And the officer tells me, no, you don't need to have a solicitor to make the complaint. On the second day, I have to return because they've now got a translator who can translate with the police. And I have the recording, so I start to play the recording. And what happens, I'm still refused to have a solicitor. So only thing I have in the police station, in the Guarda office, is the translator. So that was mistake number 4. Failure number 4, no legal representation while making the complaint. So there's an initial hearing, and that takes place within 24 to 72 hours. So the very next day, I'm stood in the court in the gender violence court in Cartagena. And the judge keeps that open because he's not in the country, so I'm not classified as a risk. And so they can't do anything. It's COVID, there's not many flights, it's restrictions all around. So the next hearing takes place on the 15th of January 2021, the very date that he had set that he was going to return on the 16th of January. So the 4 months deadline actually was the date that I was stood in the gender violence court. So our solicitor is now representing my former partner in this hearing, and he stood as power of attorney. And the complaint that I made to the police was about emotional and psychological abuse. Now, I didn't understand all of the ins and outs of everything that had happened. I just knew that I felt fearful, that I was intimidated, that I was humiliated, that there was verbal aggression and anger, right? Coercion, even. And I didn't understand all the ins and outs of emotional and psychological abuse at that point. And trying to explain it is really difficult. So I'm in the middle of a court, like a deer caught in the headlights, and the complaint that is being heard in the court was one minor verbal abuse, because I didn't have legal representation at the police station, and so my complaint has been twisted into something completely different. And so by March is when I actually received the sentence from that court, which was sent to me by a WhatsApp message from the free public appointed legal representative. So failure number 6, I forwarded that sentence, which was all in Spanish, to the original solicitor who had given the advice to file the complaint in the first place. And he told me that the court had not considered a longer case of bad behaviour and I should appeal. So I go back to the free solicitor in the case. I send him a message on WhatsApp and ask, what can I do? He's going to get off with all of this. And his reply, the free solicitor's response, was, my job is done. His job was done. And then I'm told, I need to find a new solicitor. And I'm like, oh, right, okay. And that was it. Bush, no appeal, nothing. So, number 8, the victim's office then get in touch with me in a call. And I'm told that because the case has been dismissed, I'm not classed as a victim or survivor. And I should attend to the church in the next village. They might be able to help me. And I should go to social services and ask for help there. Number 9, I attend an organisation which are meant to help victims of gender violence in Cartagena. And I remember I had one email from the social worker in that organisation. And then I was given an appointment to see their legal representation. And from that legal person's advice, I was told, do not make any more complaints. You will make him angry. Is this like victim blaming? Like, don't make a complaint because you're going to make him angry? He was already angry. The next piece of advice was negotiate. And I had already tried to negotiate 6 times up to that point in March. I tried to negotiate. So can you see where I'm coming from when I've been given this advice from a Spanish solicitor who doesn't know anything of what's gone before, and I'm with a translator trying to explain things to her, and in her mind it's like black and white, this is that, bush bang, don't make a complaint, you're making him angry, negotiate, when she didn't know anything about the past experience I'd already gone through. So that's 9. So she also said that in negotiating anything for a financial settlement, it's always money first, then leave. So that was stuck in my head. 10. So basically, his clip was telling me that I could not negotiate. This recording that I have from the 15th of September. And I've now made that live on YouTube, and the clip is on another podcast, which I made live. So 11. I had appointed a mediation company from January, and by May, I sacked the mediation company because they tricked me, they manipulated me, and they lied to me. I talk about this, I write about it in my first book, which I had written and published under the pen name Loraine Healing. Failure number 12, July 2021. There is some prospective buyers, and I'm asked if I would allow a viewing. So yes, I do allow this viewing. Now in July, there's been a few different emails throughout June before he arrives back in July, and he arrives back here with his wife, his new wife, who he'd married in May 2021. And there's been a number of gaslighting emails from him before we make an agreement. We go to meet in the open air at a bar, and he tries to introduce me to his new wife, and I walk away because I'm not into being introduced to someone who I don't want to know, and I just walk away. But I do obtain a signed agreement after 3 hours sitting in the sunshine on the 24th of July 2021. I obtained a signed agreement. And then we find out the buyers were going to put a deposit, but then they dropped out. He had changed the agreement without talking to me first, and he obviously changes it from money on sale agreed to money after I leave. So I thought, well, no, because the charity said that, the gender violence charity said it's money first, then leave. So I can't leave and think that I'm going to be paid the money. It has to be money first, then leave. But if you've got no legal representation and you've got nobody fighting your corner, very difficult to negotiate with someone who's in that position of control over you. So I get back to him, ask for another meeting. He won't meet because he's a coward, and I offer him vacant possession of the property. I just say, look, pay the money first. I've got somewhere to go. I've got an offer of temporary accommodation, and if you pay the money, I can leave. But he wouldn't honour the agreement that was signed, and he wouldn't allow me to have a free life in July 2021. So I was still stuck, and I was still trying to find my feet, and I was still trying to get to the top and trying to think, how do I move on and how do I get forward? And I wasn't just sitting back, because I was creating YouTube videos and trying to look at how to do affiliate marketing. And I was writing my first book from April of 2021. And I procrastinated a lot on writing that book, but I still kept going. Just keep going. It's very important to just keep going. So I didn't hear anything for a long time. And then 2022, January 2022, I receive his email and it just says, Happy New Year, Loraine, as if nothing has happened. So he's playing nice again. And I get someone to help me to draft a response to that email because I don't want to antagonize him. So I get help from a relationship coach, and she helps to draft the email and I send it back to him. And it's like, yes, I will allow a viewing if he will honor the first proposal. And I just send it back and I'm waiting for his response. And a few days later, I get the response. I open the email to read it, and then it's like, boom, he turns hostile again. I read the email, and I've got this sick feeling at the pit of my stomach. Because when I read the email, he's now saying, You're now at risk of the Guardia Civil turning up unexpectedly, and you will be forced to leave with just your personal possessions. So that's January of 2022. And he's telling me, Have you not seen the court documents? Have you not read these court documents? And he's sending the court documents to me in another email. So that was January 2022. So I again reach out to the original solicitor who gave me the advice to go to court and to stop the proceedings and to obtain free legal representation. And he says, no, the Guardia Civil can't just turn up and tell you to leave. It's got to go through the official proceedings. It's got to go through the court. They've got to listen to all this information. They've got to make a decision first. So I go to the court and stop everything. That was on the 13th of January of 2022. So when I get the documents back, I translate all of these documents from Spanish to English. And I discover that quite a lot of the statements are misrepresentations of facts. And I write on that document in the margins, in Spanish, at every paragraph just about, esto no es verdad. Esto no es verdad. This is not true, right? Now then, I'm appointed a legal representative, and who doesn't really help me. When I take this document with me to the meeting, the first meeting that we had, she has her daughter in the room who is going to be the translator. She doesn't speak English and I don't speak Spanish, but she looks through the document that I've got and she reads the paragraphs at the side, the little messages at the side where I've corrected what the truth is, and esto no es verdad. And we talk through that meeting and I'm being told, go back to the UK, go back to your family. And I'm like, what? What sort of advice is this? Go back to the UK, go back to your family. It's like, you're English, get out of our country. Discrimination. Anyway, I discovered a law called Article 49 bis. And basically what it was is that in a civil case, it can be stopped by the judge if he believes or they believe that there's a case of gender violence. And so I had this idea that in the eviction case, if that's raised of what's already happened and the evidence that I have, the letter that I have, the verbal meeting, the recorded meeting, which he had agreed to pay money, 50% of the value of the house, it was all written down and it was all verbally talked about. That obviously the judge might think, wait, hold on a minute, you can't like offer this money and then decide that you're evicting this woman. But none of the evidence was actually submitted to the court. Because I attend to that court 5 days before the hearing to try and have my evidence submitted into the court. But I didn't understand Spanish systems because you need an attorney to actually submit evidence to the court. And my lawyer wasn't listening to anything that I said, that she didn't listen anything about the gender violence. She didn't listen to anything about what had gone on before then, how I'd been intimidated, how I'd, you know, how he had threatened me with my suitcases out the door. She didn't listen to any of that. It was just that this is a simple procedure. He just wants his house back. And I'm like, well, I offered him his house back, but he didn't want it in 2021, you know? I've even got a signed agreement, but that wasn't allowed into the court either. So I was told by the court official 5 days behind, 5 days before this hearing in June, that your solicitor is not helping you, that you should sack that solicitor. You should make an official complaint. Yeah. And then she advised me I need to find a translator. But I didn't know why she was giving this advice or why I should sack the solicitor at this point. So I didn't. And I turned up to the hearing. So we're on point 17 by now. So it's June 2022, and the civil court verbal hearing lasted for 5 minutes. I didn't understand any of it because it was all in Spanish. His solicitor was on a video link. My solicitor was in the court. There was a judge and the prosecution and my ex-partner with his new wife, and he had two people with him, I guess his legal representative and maybe a translator. And before I go into this court, she just tells me again that the judge will order your eviction. And this was all the information I was getting. So by now, I'm basically even more traumatized. So there wasn't any questions asked at the court. I didn't have any opportunity to speak in the court, and none of my evidence was submitted to the court. And at the end of that court hearing, I had a letter for the judge in Spanish. So I walked over to the desk, put the letter on the desk, and walked back to the chair to get my things before leaving the courtroom. And my legal representative ran from the podium down to the desk, snatched the letter off the desk, ran to me and handed it back. And I stood in the middle of that courtroom and said, "What just happened? What just happened?" And then I was threatened with the police that if I didn't leave the courtroom, the judge was going to call the police. So I quickly left. So we're on point 18 now. So I informed the solicitor that I was told to sack her, and then she decides to appeal to a higher court. I then just find out how the higher court works. You don't get to be in front of the court. You don't get to say anything to the court because all the higher court is like a review. So 3 magistrates will look at the case again. And because obviously there was no evidence that was submitted to the court, I didn't even have an opportunity to speak in that court. It wasn't really any use. So the 3 magistrates look at this thing and the case is dismissed. Now, the appeal, because there'd been strikes and things like that happen, so from June of 2022, the appeal went in straight away because it's very limited time slot to appeal. But the actual case dismissed didn't come back until mid-2023. Now, by then, when that case was dismissed, I decide that I want to sack the lawyer. I ask for all of the files. I get all of the files from the lawyer and I try to sack the lawyer, and she isn't sacked immediately. For some reason, I haven't a clue. So she's still my solicitor. October of 2022, the Guardia Civil arrive unexpectedly at the property, and I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to be evicted. They've come to give us eviction notice, and I'm like, oh, in the panic again, not knowing what it was all about. When I go over to speak to the police, they then tell me that my former partner has filed several minor misdemeanors. Now, at this point, I've published the book that I've written in May of 2022. The court has heard the eviction hearing in June of 2022, and I've sold my UK property because I want to try and find somewhere to live, right? I've sold the property. I've got a little bit of money that has come from the house. I've sold it at a cheaper value because the tenants had lived there for over 5 years, and obviously they paid a lot of rent, and I had a little bit of money left over after the mortgage got paid off. So I'm looking at how I can get out of this house and find somewhere else to live. But he has now filed several minor misdemeanors, and now I'm being handed an appointment to go to the court to pick up the court documents. And I'm asking them, am I under arrest? But apparently not. So meanwhile, all of this has gone on in the background. I've also created or started 2 YouTube channels. One was all about affirmations and positive affirmations, and the other one was all about affiliate marketing, how to do reviews of products to sell affiliate products on YouTube. And so I'm sort of moving ahead, but also being dragged back at the same time. So you start moving ahead again, and then you're getting dragged back. And this is what post-separation abuse is like. You just think you're getting a couple of steps ahead of yourself, and you're thinking, this is going to be all right, everything's going to be fine. And then, boom, something else happens, and you're dragged back. So by this time, I think I've tried, it must be, I've actually tried about nearly 9 times or 10 times up to then that point to come out with some sort of settlement, some sort of win-win situation, and nothing's worked. So we're up to about 20 now. So I collect these court documents and I check through the documents and all of the allegations where his solicitors requested maximum penalties. And when I'm looking at this, I'm feeling that this was like heavy-handed scare tactics, basically. So I'll just read out what the allegations were. Revealing secrets, 5 years prison. Insults, 14 months prison. Slander, 2 years prison. Harassment, 2 years prison. Misappropriation, 3 years prison. Theft, 18 months prison. Damages, 3 years prison. And all told, it was around 17 years of prison. Again, I look through the court documents. I'm translating the Spanish to English. And in the court document, there's falsehoods, gaslighting, and manipulation. He even told the solicitor it wasn't a real relationship. She was just a piece of convenience. I'm like, oh, thank you. 11 years of my life as a piece of convenience. Do you think I would have stayed around for 11 years if I considered myself a piece of convenience? Well, I could tell you now, the answer would be no. So, by the end of 2022, I've attempted numerous times to try and come to a solution with a person who is unreasonable, vindictive, angry, abusive. Now, under the laws of gender violence in Spain, Article 44, Paragraph 5, right, of the Organic Law of 2004 expressly prohibits mediation, especially if any that comes before specialist violence against women courts. But the advice I received from the solicitor in the charity CAVI that's meant to support survivors and victims, it was to negotiate. So I'm expected to negotiate with an angry, abusive person, right? When it's meant to be prohibited. So there's another failure. So apparently it doesn't matter if you've had a case in the gender violence court. If it's been dismissed, then there wasn't any violence. But only sometimes cases are dismissed because there's not enough evidence to prosecute. And if they don't put the evidence in the court, how does the judge know what's gone on before when it was a long case of abuse? And they've only looked at a piece of a recording and one sentence out of 26-minute long recording and said, no, there wasn't any abuse. And then victim blamed me for making him angry. Doesn't really... Okay, so it's point 21, June in 2023. I'm advised to file a police report against my former partner. I'm advised to file coercion because he's terminated the utilities at the property. It was the water first, and the reason why he terminated the water supply was because there'd been a leak, and I had paid to have the whole water pipe, the mains water pipe, replaced at the property, and it was 70 meters of water pipe, and I had someone to connect and plumb this pipe in. And on the 28th of June, I sent my former partner a message to say I'd repaired the water pipe, I'd replaced it all. Then he got vindictive, and he then terminated the utilities by logging on to the website of the water company and cancelling the contract. And 2 days later, on the 30th of June, the water company turned up and removed the water meter. And so I reported to the police, the local police, on the 30th of June, after getting the advice from my lawyer, the criminal lawyer in Madrid, who's dealing with all of the 7 allegations against me. And basically, the case for the coercion was heard in the gender violence court in September of 2023. And as of today, which is November the 24th, I have not had any resolution for that case since June 2023, filed with the police, and September 2023, reported into the court. There's been no resolution to that. So is that another violation of human rights, to have no running water in the property and no proper sanitation in the property? Yet I'm feeling like I'm a criminal because of what's happened. Meanwhile, he is just in the UK doing whatever he's doing and living his life as normal, where I'm following legal advice and being victimized at the same time. So I've actually paid for this advice as well. I paid for legal representation. The solicitor sent me an invoice for €1,750. I paid that to the solicitor. I obviously wasn't thinking, because when it's a gender violence case, you're entitled to free legal representation. And obviously, I don't know why I ended up paying. I just wasn't thinking straight. So let's go to point 22. The same month that the first hearing takes place in the gender violence court, the company that I'm with, the legal firm from Madrid, is dealing with the allegations. So I'm in court again within 2 weeks. I'm in the criminal court, Cartagena, to be questioned by the judge, my solicitor, and his solicitor. And obviously, I paid for legal representation because it didn't seem like minor misdemeanors to me when there was 17 years of prison attached. And the prosecutor had already appointed a free public lawyer, but I had no faith in the free public representation anymore. And so because I'd already sold my house, I decided it would be a better investment to pay somebody to help with legal representation in this case. I had already tried contacting about a dozen solicitors in the Cartagena, Murcia area, and every one of those solicitors I made contact with wasn't able to take the case or couldn't speak English. And so I had to widen the search. And when I widened the search, I found a criminal law firm that only deals with criminal cases, and they were based in Madrid. So I was given some advice before we went to go to the court. So I can't fault his legal representation because he was very good. He actually helped me to understand what would go on. He came over on Zoom and he asked me the questions before we went into the court. So I had an idea of the questions he would ask. And then he basically said to me that, look, the other solicitor might be a little bit like the devil when he's trying to question us. So I had to be prepared. And I've been building up to this criminal case because what I did with some of the money that I had, I actually appointed a hypnotherapist to help me. So I was paying for a hypnotherapist and therapy to help me to reduce the anger that was in me because everything, I mean, it's an emotional situation to start with. But when you are faced with post-separation abuse, it's litigation abuse, and you know for a fact that what you're being accused of is fabricated statements and that it's false accusations, you're not going to be calm. You can't just forget things and think everything's going to be fine because the manipulations that have already gone on in the civil court, you knew that the statements were false, but you didn't have a voice to say anything. So I wasn't calm and I was angry. And I think that was just natural. It's a natural state of affairs when you're angry about false accusations against you. So I'd gotten therapy to help us to stay calm when I was in the court. Now, my legal representative had informed me not to answer any question about the self-published book. So I'm in front of the judge and he's asking me some questions. And the first thing is about how long I've been in a relationship with this man. And I answer that question because obviously he'd already stated it wasn't a real relationship and in the statement he made. So the first question was, how long were you in a relationship? So I informed the judge about that. And then when he asks the question about, did I publish a book? I replied, yes. Oops. I didn't follow the instruction. I didn't know what to say. Maybe it was, I do not want to answer that question. But it was, anybody could see plainly from the report that was made that I did publish a book. So by not answering the question, I thought maybe that would implicate me by not wanting to answer the question because it was obvious I'd published a book. So I just wanted to tell the truth because I didn't feel right by saying, I don't want to answer that question. So anyway, point 23. After the 2 hearings are held in September, I then had to submit evidence to the women's court to show what I'd actually explained to them when I gave my testimony. And again, I was angry because the evidence that went to the court didn't include some of the evidence that I talked about, like the letter that he had written with his offer of 50% of the property and all of the pay your mortgage, 35,000 and all of the furniture and everything like that. It wasn't submitted to the court. So I was angry because then every time I tried to call the solicitor's office, my solicitor wouldn't answer my calls. So I was then thinking, oh, I must be on the naughty step. So that was what happened. By was point 24, December of 2023, the original solicitor that was appointed for the eviction case, for my legal defence in the eviction case, was sacked and she was replaced by another free solicitor. And I have already been to the police again in November to report another complaint about the false accusations in the civil and the criminal courts. I went to the Guardia Civil again to report all of that, to tell them that the reason why he's filed these false accusations was because I wrote this book and I had the book with us, and I explained to the Guardia Civil what was in this book about the relationship and how the relationship played out. And so they filed that report and put it into the women's court. So in December of 2023, I receive an email with the date of the eviction. And the eviction date is 21st of March, 2024. And I'm told that the police will attend to help me. And that was the sum total of that email. And there's no advice, no information, nothing to say you should go to social services, you need to find yourself somewhere to live. There was nothing, no support, nothing. Then a few days later, I have another email from the lawyer in Madrid, and he tells me 5 of the 7 criminal allegations have now been dismissed. The only 2 allegations that were left in the court were defamation and damages. So now I'm under the threat of eviction by March 2024, but I've had 5 allegations dismissed and I've got 2 allegations left in the court. So it's a little bit of bittersweet news. So I ask for the documents and go through all of the court documents, and I discover that social services, who were meant to do a vulnerability report, because I was told to go to social services in May 2022 before the court hearing, the free solicitor had said, you need to go there, you need to ask for a vulnerability report. So in May 2022, I actually did that. I went to the social services. I didn't want to go there, but I thought, look, I've been told there, if I don't do it, then I'm going to be in the wrong. So I followed the legal advice and I go to social services and I sit in front of someone and I'm telling them I need this vulnerability report. And the woman looks at me and said, no, you can't ask for a vulnerability report. And I'm saying, what? So I fold my arms like this and I'm saying, right, well, I'm not moving out of this office until you tell me why. And I said, phone the solicitor then, phone the solicitor and she can tell you what it is. But they wouldn't do anything. So then a manager from social services comes in after she goes out, and this manager comes in and I'm sitting at the desk and he's got 2 yellow sticky notes. And on these 2 yellow sticky notes, he puts them down in front of me on the desk. And one says, "It is the solicitor who asks the court." And on the other sticky note, it says, "Then the court asks social services." And my head was blown off by then, because I'm thinking, what am I doing here? Why am I going through all of this? What the heck is this all about? Because I've been told I have to come here. I've had to drive 25 minutes from the house to come into the centre of Cartagena. And then I've got to drive 25 minutes back, and I haven't ended up doing anything. I've only been told that it's all a big mistake, that it's the solicitor who asks the court and the court who asks, social services. And I'm thinking, no, the blinking wonder people could jump out of their bloody flats and commit suicide before the eviction date because they're so stressed out by everything. They just want to end it all. Just keep going. So anyway, I'm like, this is what's happened at social services, and I'm just in disbelief. In the middle of 2023, when I found out that the reason why the court official told me to sack the solicitor, I've found a document that says they filed this document to the court in May of 2022, about, I don't know, 10, 15 days before the hearing, because the court's asking, are they going to ask any questions? And so she's responded, the lawyer responded, and it says something like, she won't interrogate the plaintiff, which is the ex-partner. The reason is neither the plaintiff or the defendant understands or speaks Spanish. Well, that's language discrimination. That's one. And then she says her client, meaning me, lacks any form of income and has recognised free legal assistance, and so the court would have to appoint a translator. That's discrimination number 2, socio-economic status, because I lack any form of income. And so that was 2 grounds of discrimination before the court has been held. And I find that letter and understand what's going on. And because of obviously the failure from the start in the gender violence court, and then how I was victim blamed and how he manipulated things by telling lies to his solicitor, I file a complaint to the ECHR, the European Court of Human Rights, because of all the violations of my human rights. And my understanding is that the court has a backlog of at least 3 years. So that would be 2026 before my complaint actually gets anywhere near to the top of the pile of complaints that go in. So that's already done. And then the eviction is still for March. So I try to write to the free solicitor who's been appointed and don't get anywhere. She doesn't respond. So I actually go to the court in person and take some of the documents with me. And the social services apparently had sent an appointment for me to attend in August of 2023. Now, in August, I'm trying to reinstate the water. I'm trying to reinstate the electricity. And I didn't get any letter. I didn't get any email, and I didn't get any phone call from social services to tell us that I needed to attend an appointment in August. So I take this information to the courthouse, and then they say you should write to your solicitor. I says, I've tried. The manager comes out of the courthouse, and he tells me that they will intervene with the solicitor to make sure that she contacts me and accepts an appeal in to the court. So she does that. She does this appeal. I've gotten this information from an English solicitor here, and then the eviction is suspended in order that social services set up a new appointment to do the assessment of vulnerability. Okay. And that was done, and basically the eviction was suspended. Now, point 20, what we on? Point 26. So the eviction is suspended, but the former partner ignores the suspension. And basically, he's already had information from his solicitor to say it's suspended, but in his head, it doesn't make any difference if it's suspended or not, because he hires a locksmith and he hires a neighbour to attend the property at the time on the 21st of March. So I'm here, a big van arrives and a car arrives, and it's the locksmith and the neighbour. Is this harassment? I never reported the harassment. Point 27, it's May of 2024. And I gave my testimony to the Women's Court from the complaint that I made in November of 2023. And that's 6 months of a wait in order to give a testimony to the Women's Court. And then I hear nothing at all, right? I hear nothing at all from May 2024. Obviously, June, July, then everything shuts down. They have the summer. August, nothing's open. Then in September of 2024, just a couple of months back, I find a report. I'm searching on the internet, and I find a report, which is a case report of incidents of SLAP litigations, which is strategic litigations against public participation, which is like a form of where the powerful person can litigate against anyone who publishes, like a journalist or an author or an individual or a charity or an NGO, publish anything against politicians or, you know, people in the public eye. If they've reported something, then that person or that company or whoever it is can say, right, okay, that's defamation. And then they slap this allegation on you, which then you're forced into a legal process. You're forced into this legal process, this is what had happened to me, because obviously I published the book, he read the book, then he forced me through 7 allegations and revealing secrets and defamation and slander and harassment and all of that. And so I find this case report, and I open the case report and I start reading through the different people who are in these litigations, which has been recognised in this report as SLAP. And as I'm reading through it, I find that there's one case which is seized. It's in the Spanish courts, or these cases are in the Spanish courts. One case is seized. So then I find it's one individual, and I'm like, well, what a coincidence that in the dates, I'm one individual who's got a court case that's seized in the Spanish courts, and it's about defamation, obviously. So then I read about the complainant, and the complainant that they've recognised who has made the complaint is a person who has a business registered in the UK. And I'm like, ping, straight away, I'm like, hold on a minute, that is me, that is him, this is the case, it's got to be. It's one case in all of these other cases that has got one person, a claimant with a business registered in the UK. It can't be any coincidence, right? So I then take that link and that document and send it forward to my solicitor, my lawyer, criminal lawyer in Madrid. So that's September, about the 12th of September. October, we're on point 28 now. So in October of 2024, I receive an email on the 7th of October, and that email is from the free lawyer in the eviction case. And the email notifies me that the date for the eviction is resumed. And the date is going to be December the 19th at 11:30, which is 6 days before Christmas. Now, I'm not happy about that, obviously, because I then ask the solicitor, I want all of the files. And she sends me the link, and I get all of the files. And there's 349 documents that have downloaded from an external link that relate to the court case just for the eviction. But it's not just that. On the 8th of October, the next day, I call the British Embassy, as I don't have the name of the free legal representation that turned up in May, 5 minutes before I gave the testimony to the Women's Court. I don't have that lawyer's name. I don't have it. I don't have his telephone number. I don't have the name of the company. I don't have his email address. So there's no way to contact him. So I ask the British Embassy to intervene. And so the consulate, Alicante, British consulate, ring the Women's Court and obtain the name of the solicitor and his mobile number. And so on that date, on the 8th of October, I then message him to ask if he has heard anything. And on the 8th of October, he said no, he has not heard anything. So I'm like, right. So it's been May when I had my testimony. So that's May, June, July, August, September, October. Another 5 months have passed. Another 5 months have passed. And he still hasn't heard anything from the testimony I've given about all the false accusations that he's made in the courts. The next thing that happens is that I send another couple of messages to the solicitor, and by the 22nd of October, he sends me a text message back to tell me that the court has now made an appointment for the next hearing, which is going to be February of 2025. So I'm being evicted on the 19th of December by Court 3, in Cartagena. And then the Women's Court have made the next hearing for my complaint about false allegations is not until 2025. Make it make sense. And then on the 30th of October, my criminal lawyer gets back to me. He wants to speak to me and he calls, and then he tells me that the final two allegations, the defamation and the damages, the judge has dismissed the case, so there's no allegations left in the court. And I should be ecstatic, but at the same time, I'm not very happy because he's still getting away with all of the things that he did, all of the false allegations, all of the abuse. He's gotten away with it. I haven't even received compensation. There's of the costs, no moral damages, nothing, right? It's just been dismissed. And to add on top of that, the lawyer wants his other half of his payment, which I don't have anymore, and are unable to pay the other half. of what this solicitor was requesting. So I have to tell him, obviously, all of that. So it's bittersweet again. It's like you get one step forward, but you're still getting dragged back. So, no compensation, no moral damages, nothing. And I actually wrote about all these gaps in the laws and the failings that I've experienced in my first book. And I'm writing the sequel to that book to document what happened from 2021 to 2024, to tell the rest of the story of how post-separation abuse actually pans out and what happens. I mean, it's not easy to go through. It's not like you can just lead a normal life. It's not easy. I mean, yes, I have tried to earn income. I've been learning new skills. I've self-published a book. I've started YouTube channels. I've started a TikTok channel. I've got my Facebook channel. I've got 2 blogs. I write articles on Medium, but I don't make a stable form of income. And that was one of the reasons why the March eviction was squashed at that point, because obviously social services wrote that I have a vulnerability, I have no income, I've got no form of income. But even so, I still haven't had any support. I haven't had help move forward. I haven't had any psychological support. I've had to pay for everything myself. I've had to pay for therapy and things, where really then it should be given as a support and not something I have to pay for every time. And just to move through this, what's important to me is the truth. The truth is important to me. Now, during all of the research that I did when I was writing my first book, I uncovered lots of the failings, and there's reports available online, and I will leave some links to some of these reports so that you can see just what sort of failings can happen, because it's not just me. It happens to lots of women in Spain, in the UK, in Australia, in the US, in Canada. And it happens across the globe. I mean, it's not just civil court, it's not just criminal court, it happens in the family court as well. So it doesn't matter if you're married, doesn't matter if you're not married, right? It doesn't matter. These systemic failings across lots of different courts and lots of different countries. It's basically like a bias, discrimination, or whatever you want to call it. So the other thing is that legal professionals don't seem to understand emotional and psychological abuse. And they've been trained by a certain point, and they've gone through laws. When they were doing their training, they went through the laws then, and then they might have been in service 10 years, 15 years, 20 years as a solicitor. Now, if they don't keep updating and reading new things that come into law and discovering more about it, or if they don't actually want to specialise in a subject, then they just go for basic. Then if you pick that type of solicitor, you'll get nowhere. Because a lot of the solicitors that I contact in Spain and in the UK, the thing I heard over and over and over again was, it's very difficult to prove emotional and psychological abuse. It's very difficult to prove emotional and psychological abuse. Now, it's not called that in the UK, because since 2015 in the UK, it's called coercive control. And that's part of the whole thing about emotional psychological abuse and someone with power over you to control you, and you don't understand that is what is happening when you're in a relationship. You don't understand that, and it might not be for a long time before you realize that you've been trapped in a relationship and that they do have power over you, and that when that relationship ends suddenly, or you decide to leave that relationship, that's what at the point where things can escalate and move into another type of abuse. And that's how you end up with a post-separation power and control, which is litigation abuse, which is just another form of psychological emotional abuse that they pile on, because it's all accusations, it's false accusations. So yeah, emotional and psychological abuse. I mean, in Spain, the NGOs have reported a higher incidence of women in Spain reporting this form of abuse since 2020. But there is a very low incidence of these things like emotional and psychological abuse being prosecuted through the women's courts. And that's being pointed out in the reports through Grevio, which is the group of experts that look into how states deal with gender violence under the Istanbul Convention. The other thing is weaponizing defamation, which is recognised as another form of abuse. So this podcast now today is documenting systemic barriers to justice and highlights the bias in the justice system. Now, from solicitors who told me it's difficult to prove emotional and psychological abuse, to police who didn't follow the basic rights, to social services who didn't want to help me at the beginning, to free legal representatives who didn't listen, who ignored my reports of abuse, who just turn up, 30 minutes before a hearing and just use the police report, don't ask any questions, and go into a hearing with no more than what is written in the statement by the police. So these are the feelings that happen. And basically, for me to be denied a voice in the court for the precarious eviction in the civil court, all of this. So this is a podcast that I'm going to be sending out to the solicitors who have been involved in my case, because I want to make contact with the solicitors through the last 4 years that I've suffered this emotional trauma, I've suffered grief, I've suffered panic attacks, I've suffered anxiety and financial loss. So I want to make sure that these solicitors have this information, because justice is not just about punishing bad behaviour. It's about changing the way that we think about justice. And every person who walks into a courtroom deserves to be treated with respect, regardless of race, gender, language, and socio-economic status. And I feel that I was not treated with respect, because I feel I was discriminated against in that court. I was victim blamed in the gender violence court, and then I wasn't allowed to speak because I didn't understand Spanish, and he didn't understand Spanish, so there wasn't any questions asked. I didn't even have a translator appointed, even though I had a translator on the day, and that translator wasn't able to translate anything because there wasn't any questions to translate. As soon as one solicitor said one thing, the other solicitor said another thing, the judge went bang on the table, and that was it, finished. And that was how long the court lasted, 5 minutes. So there should be regular audits of judicial decisions to check for racial and gender disparities. And in cases of precarious eviction involving intimate partner relationships, there should be questions asked and mandatory negotiations between two solicitors to ensure an equitable outcome, regardless of marital status. Family law protects married women. However, there are many books published on divorcing a narcissist, but not many publications that highlight separation in non-married relationships. And when I discovered the conflicting legal advice, it made no sense. I was advised by 3 solicitors to remain in the property and negotiate. Yet, according to the testimony by my former partner, his advice was just put her bags on the doorstep. And he told the judge in the criminal court, I wish I had done that now. What type of man? Part of the title of the book that I wrote under the pen name of Loraine Kaling. So now, as I move on to try and recover from all of these 4 years of abuse, when at the start I was told, you've got 4 months in this house, Loraine, 4 months. If you haven't bought this house, if this house isn't sold, then you're out and I'm moving back in. So 4 months turned into 4 years. And now I'm facing eviction in December of the 19th, 2024. And I've been working in the background. I've been working on a business plan. I've been working on a pitch deck. I've been working on a financial projection. And I have come to that point now where I have researched all costs. I've researched the things I need. I've got a short list of land plots. And what I want to do next is to raise money to start a new business, to have a future, to start a new business. And so if anybody is interested in this new business that I want to start, you can reach out to me via email. I will leave my email address in the notes of this podcast, and I will talk to anyone who wants to find out about the business plans that I have, because I'm looking for investors and I'm looking for help. I need to raise money in order to buy the land and to start the business, which is going to be a country park in Spain, and it's going to be a motorhome park and a trauma to transformation retreat. I've got everything researched, and if you were interested in finding out more about that, please get in touch through my email address, reach out so we can have a conversation and I can let you have a copy of the pitch deck. And if you're interested in helping with the fundraising, I will leave a link to the initial crowdfunding that I've launched under donor box. I'll leave that link in the video and I'll put it in the show notes through Apple, Spotify and Acast. And now that is the end of this podcast. It's been a bit longer than my usual podcast, but I've had to document everything that I've been through because I have not got no clue how I'm going to survive if this eviction goes ahead in December, because obviously I don't have anywhere to go. I don't have any immediate friends here. I'm isolated from family that I have in the UK. And the money that I did liquidate from the house I don't have that anymore. And so I'm in a situation where I want to move forward, but I feel as if I'm still stuck. So
any help at all will be really appreciated. And as you can see, I do have the t-shirts. This is one of them on my website, and they're all available on Amazon. I've got the two different types. I've got the Narcissist Aware collection. I also have the Self-Care collection, and that also the free group, where any members of the free group can become founder members of the monthly group, where I'm going to share my knowledge and help empower people to move through from trauma to transformation. I actually took a certification in trauma coaching in January of 2024, and I have got that trauma informed coaching certificate from 2024. So this is the podcast for today, and it's been rather long, but I hope that you've managed to get through all of the documented failures that I've gone through. And I just wish everyone the best, and bye for now.